Have you heard the whispers from those snobby Revit users? SketchUp isn't accurate, they say. It's just for sketches, they claim. Those voices couldn't be more off the mark. And today, we're debunking these myths once and for all. Contrary to the rumors, SketchUp stands shoulder to shoulder with the titans of professional modeling and drafting software. It's a tool of precision, a craftsman's ally in the digital age. In this eye-opening tutorial, we're constructing a complex, irregular structural grid so we can delve deep into the realms of drawing fidelity, display precision, and dimensional accuracy. Stick with me till the end to see how I produce CAD backgrounds for a structural consultant, a task that truly puts SketchUp's precision to the test. And then, the moment of truth. We'll see how SketchUp's output fares once it lands in CAD. The results are nothing short of shocking. Are you ready to gain the confidence to put the haters in their place? Let's dive into the SketchUp realm together, where the magic of creativity converges with the rigor of precision. All right, so I'm gonna start a new model using the Plan View Inches template. And I think that a lot of these rumors get started and originate with our display precision. So let's take a look at Window Model Info. And on the Units tab, you can see that our measurement units, I've got mine set to architectural, and I'll bounce back and forth between architectural and decimal. But we're gonna set our display precision to the highest value. Display precision is what SketchUp is actually going to show you when you're drawing and measuring. All right, same thing for area and volume, although they don't tend to be used as much. Now, length snap, let's definitely get rid of that. We don't want our tools to be snapping to 1/16 of an inch. We want to work within a 1/64 of an inch, the highest display precision. Same thing for angle snapping. We definitely also want our display precision for angles to be dialed all the way up to our 3 decimal places. So once I get my display precision dialed in within my units dialog, I'm gonna close this and choose File, Save as Template. And I'm gonna rename this as BD_default template, like that. Hit Tab to fill in my file name, and then we'll set this as our default template and click Save. Now, when I go to File and choose New and check under Window, Model Info, Units, you can see that all of my units are all set up and all of my display precisions are set to the highest value. Okay, so as I mentioned, I think that there's a lot of confusion that's caused from display precision versus drawing precision. The display precision in SketchUp is what SketchUp is actually going to show you when you draw or when you measure. All right, so it can only show you up to a 1/64 of an inch for a length or 3 decimal places for an angular or degrees. That's different though than the drawing precision of SketchUp. So this is where the confusion lies. A lot of folks say, that SketchUp is only accurate to a 1/64 of an inch. Well, that's not actually true. It's accurate to about 1/1000th of an inch. And as far as the radial dimensions or angular dimensions, it really goes a lot further. So what we're gonna do now is draw a very complex, irregular structural grid. It's gonna be a bit of an oval with columns going around the outside of the oval, as well as a more regular, rigid, rectangular grid in the middle of it. Just kind of making this up, and it'll give us some opportunities to demonstrate drawing precision versus display precision. And then ultimately, we're gonna hop into layout, take a look at our dimension precision. All right, so I'm gonna close out of here and activate my circle tool. I'll just click on the origin, and whenever I'm drawing a circle in SketchUp, I always wanna make sure that the circles kind of line up on an axis. I can even tap the right arrow key to constrain to the red axis. I'll give this a 50-foot radius like that. And you can see that that circle's kind of jagged, right? Well, I can type in like 48S, enter, to make it have 48 sides. Or, for this one, we're gonna go with 96S, enter. And I stick with those multiples of 12, just to kind of stick with the default of SketchUp. Next, I'll double click with my select tool and then tap the S key for my scale tool. I'm gonna click once to start and then tap Control to scale about the center point. I can let go of my mouse and type 1.5, enter. So I'll give it a scale factor of 1.5. Then I'll go back to my select tool and deselect all of my geometry. Now I'll go back to my rectangle tool here and let's tap Control, and that allows me to draw my rectangle about the center. I'm gonna call this 75 feet, 75 feet, enter. I'm gonna draw another rectangle, and I'll tap Control again, and I just want to kind of trim all these extra edges out of here that I don't need and clear them out with my eraser tool. Now I can zoom in a bit And Shift A turns off my axes to kind of clean up my screen. And what I want to do now is maybe I'll just make this a group. It's kind of just a bit of drawing guides that we're going to use for now. And I'm going to draw some columns. All right, so I'll zoom in here, activate my rectangle tool, tap Control to draw about the center. And I'm going to call this one 12, 12, enter. I'm going to double click, make it into a component, and then set my component axes to be right there at the middle. And I'll click Create. Perfect. All right, so that'll just kind of be our more regular rectangular grid, and we're gonna make this into a component and flip it along our different lines of symmetry. I'll zoom in down here and activate my rectangle tool. Again, tap Control to draw about the center. Now these columns on the perimeter are gonna be 8 by 8. All right, so I'll type 8, 8, enter. With my select tool, I can double click and then make it into a component. I'm going to set my component axes again to be right at the center, and be sure that you have that replace selection with component checked on, and I'll choose create. Now, I need to copy this column around this kind of irregular grid here. So what I'm going to do is just double click in and select this edge and copy it. I'll back out of here and hide these guides, and then I'm going to do a paste in place. All right, so my keyboard shortcut is Control-Shift-V, but we'll just do edit, paste in place. Now I do have an extension already installed, and I'll put a link in the description so you can grab this one too, and it is called Copy Along Path. And you can choose to either copy to path nodes or copy to a spacing. All right, so down in the bottom right corner of my screen, I could type in like 20 feet, enter, or 10 feet, enter. And then all I need to do is click on that component. Let me zoom in a little. There we go. Once you pre-select the path, you activate the copy along path to a certain spacing, type in your spacing, click on the component you want to copy, and away you go. All right, then I'm going to get rid of these instances of that component to kind of set up our grid, and then I'm going to delete this edge for now. I'm going to unhide the kind of guides that we had. I suppose I'm going to leave these guides intact, and we're going to get rid of them here shortly, but let's take this whole thing and make it into a component like that. And I never name my components, I just leave them alone. And I do like to set my component axes though, and I'm gonna set them right down here, which this is the origin. Remember, I turned those axes off. We'll set our component axes right at the origin, replace our selection with component, and choose create, like that. All right, I'll turn my axes off again. All right, now if you subscribe to this channel, you may have heard my scathing review of the flip tool, and I gotta back that up just a notch. My disappointment with the flip tool is that it's not really a tool that I needed. I don't want the flip tool in lieu of other features or performance increases in layout. I gotta say, after using the flip tool, it is better than the right-click flip along. It is better than the flip tool or the mirror tool that I had, so I'll give credit where credit's due. The flip tool is decent. Let me show you how that works. All right, so I'm going to activate this new flip tool, and then I can tap Control to make a copy when I'm flipping, and then I can just drag this red axis over to here, and then we can flip it and make a copy. Next, I'm going to select both, and then again, I'm going to activate my flip tool, tap Control, and then click and drag that green axis over here, and I can set that up. Okay, so let's chip away at this and draw in some column center lines, and also we'll do like a dashed line for this perimeter grid. I don't think that we're gonna need, really the only thing that we need is this guy. I'm gonna copy it again, and then I'm just gonna delete this out of that component, do a paste in place right there. I think that's really all we need for right now. And then I'm gonna use another plugin. This one is called, I do have one called Dashed Lines, but it would appear that that one's no longer available at Smustard. And so I have another one that is, let me right click, and it was called DP Line Styler. So I can then like style this line, and I'm just gonna say no, and then I'm going to invert my selection and hit delete. All right, so I'm really not an expert at this DP line styler, but it would appear that it's like $7, and you can build your own line styles, and I'll probably dig in on that another time. But I typically use this dash lines. I'm very familiar with that, but for this tutorial, I just want to show you an extension that actually exists. And you know what, I'll just close that and hit Control Z and show you this one, draw dashed lines, and then I can say like a 3-inch, that sounds good. So I kind of like the results I get from my dashed lines here. So let me redo that. I'm gonna delete this, I'm gonna paste in place, I'm gonna draw a dashed line with 3-inch intervals. And then with the dashed lines, I always like triple click them and make it into, yeah, it's okay, I don't need to make that into a group. The reason I typically make them into a group, and I believe that the other DP line styler works the same way, is that like you can accidentally unhide, and then that kind of, you know, kills your dashes, all right? So I'm gonna undo that. I'm just gonna, here, I'll cut it, I'll choose make group, I'll paste in place, and now I've got like that kind of perimeter line around the outside. All right, then I'll show you some other you know, uses for this dashed lines plugin. So I'm gonna drill in here, and I'll put links to both. I let the guys over at Smustard know that the product wasn't available. I'm sure they'll get it back online. All right, so I'm just gonna, actually first I'm gonna make this into a group. So this is my column component, and then I'm gonna throw like a grid line on here, like this. And I'll say maybe like 4 inches, like that. And you know, let's just do this manually. Like this, and maybe we'll draw this out by say 24, like that. And then I'm just gonna move this edge out another 4 inches, and then I'm gonna select you know, both these lines, and then I'm gonna rotate them and tap Control to make a copy. And we're gonna make a copy at 90 degrees, and we're gonna do that 3x enter. All right, so that way we get kind of like our grid line happening on that. All right, so there we go. Now, you know, that'll help us with dimensioning and help us in layout. All right, now for the perimeter grid, we can drill into this guy here. So again, I want to kind of keep this representation of the column as a group, and then I'm going to use my line tool, and I'm going to hover on the midpoint, and we'll start from the middle. And I guess I'll just draw out by, you know, let me undo that. We're gonna draw out by say 3 inches, like that. And then I'll draw another, what'd I say, 24 on the last one? I forget already. And then I'm gonna move it another 2 inches out. And this guy, we don't want like both of them. We're just gonna rotate this about the center, and we're gonna call this one 180 enter, like that. All right, so now we get like, you know, kind of these perfect angular column center lines that are, you know, kind of spinning out and around. And I suppose one last thing I'll do, I'm just gonna grab this column here and place it right at the middle, and then cut it, and then back out of here and do a paste in place. And then I'm gonna explode it and then get rid of these. So that way we've got like some indication of like the center line of this entire setup. That's looking pretty good. I'm gonna draw in the final detail here will just be like, you know, this guy, I'm gonna make it into a group, and then I'm going to draw a long dash, short dash, okay? Now, you know, typically I would use my dashed lines plugin to do that, and I can show you that here, like draw dashed lines, and then you can choose like long dash, short dash, and maybe give it the scale of like 6, like that. And maybe I would do that again and draw my dashed lines with a scale of say 12, like that. And then I'm just gonna select all this stuff, and I'm going to rotate it about this. Actually, I'm gonna cut it, and then I'm gonna double click into this kind of center line point, and I'll just, you know, scoot it out. Let me make this into a group, paste in place, and scoot it out just a bit, like, you know, maybe this distance here. And then I'm gonna rotate this, and again, tap Control to make a copy, rotate by 90, and do that 3 times. And then I can unhide the rest of my model, and now I can start to, like, you know, clean up. I probably don't need, I'll keep these guys here, like that, and we'll get rid of that. So that looks pretty good. So now we've got like a you know, pretty clean structural grid created, and this is going to give us the opportunity to really explore drawing precision. Okay, so we've got our structural grid in place. We're looking good. Now I want to drill in and take a look at the actual drawing precision of SketchUp. So we're going to add some detail to the columns, and you're going to start to see that you can draw beyond a 64th of an inch. Let me show you what that's all about. All right, so I'm going to zoom in and take a look at this column here. All right, and if I double click in and I can just, work on this geometry here. And let's just use like our offset tool. And I'm gonna do an offset. And if I say 1 divided by 64, enter, all right? And then look at that. I mean, it's so tiny, right? So I zoom way in, and then I can use my tape measure tool, and I can measure that. And I get a nice clean 1/64th of an inch. Let's try this. I'm gonna do an offset like this, and I'm gonna offset by 1/128. Enter. So you can see that I can draw with a precision beyond a 64th of an inch. So I was able to actually offset by 1/128th of an inch. I can even offset by 1 divided by 1000 like that and hit enter and zoom way in. And you can see now that this is 1/1000th of an inch. This is a 1/128th, and this is 1/64th. This is extreme drawing precision demonstrated in SketchUp. The confusion comes in because the display precision of SketchUp only lets me see it's gonna report as 0, but I get that tilde. And that little squiggle in front there, that's the tilde, that lets me know that it's almost 0. And I think that that's another case where the rumors start flying that folks see the tilde and they think, oh, it's almost, SketchUp's not accurate. No, that just means that the display precision of SketchUp won't let it actually read that out. All right, so remember, window, model info units, our display precision is set to a 64th of an inch. Now check this out. What if we jump over here to decimal, and we're gonna make sure that we're, dialed all the way up, and area and volume, that doesn't matter, but angle units, the angle display precision is set to our 3 decimal places there. If I measure from here to here, it's 0.007813. All right, so let's check our math again on 1 divided by 128 equals 0.007812. All right, so our display precision cuts off at the 6 decimal places. That's why we're getting that 0.007813. All right, so again, if I look over here from this line to this line, 0.007813, when I measure that, do the math, 1 divided by 128 equals 0.007812. All right, so SketchUp's display precision is cutting off on that 6th decimal place. All right, but you can see it's actually 8125. All right, and so now here's what I want to do. Let's do a test, all right? So I'm gonna hit Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, all right? And we're kind of back to where we were. I was just looking at just how precise you can actually be. Well, let's try this. Let's do an offset. Let's set this up so it looks like a column. And I'm gonna offset this by 0.987654321. So see how I said 0.987654321 in the bottom right corner, enter? So this is almost an inch. And when I go and measure this, from here to here, it's 0.897654. But remember, I typed in the 321. That's gonna come into play when we talk about our backgrounds. Again, the display precision of SketchUp is limiting the measurements, or what we're able to see when we're measuring things, but we're not limited with our drawing precision. We can actually draw pretty much up to 1/1000th of an inch, although I've read some claims that it goes beyond that. It's just that once you get to that level, points just kind of merge together. So you can see that there's a difference between the display precision and the drawing precision. So in SketchUp, we can actually draw well beyond that 64th of an inch. We can draft to a precision that is greater. I showed you that we can go to a 128. We can even go up to 1/1000th of an inch. Let's see what happens if we type in something over 1/1000th of an inch. All right, just for kind of one final test here, I'm just gonna do a quick offset, and I'm gonna set this to 0.0001, enter. And you see that we get a 0 length offset is not allowed. So we've set up our our column to be 0.9876543221, and then we're just gonna make it look like a column like this and like this. And then I suppose I could just like take this guy and make a copy. We'll select this rectangle and make a copy of it and snap it to the center line. And then I'll use my eraser tool and get rid of these pieces like that and like that. And that's about as good as it gets, to represent that column. So when I zoom out, you can see that that column is represented across the board because this is all set up as a component. Yeah, I think that's going to be good for that demonstration. All right, so before we get out of SketchUp here, I want to just set up a few guidelines, and let's just take a few angular dimensions or measure a few angles using our protractor tool. All right, so here's our protractor tool. And I'm just gonna set measure a point. So here's where it intersects. So what is this angle? All right, so you can see that this angle is 13.910, but it has that tilde in front of it. And that means that there's more decimal places. So SketchUp is not able to report back any further than to the 1,000th of a degree. So basically I get those 3 decimal places for my angular precision, but the tilde lets me know that there's more numbers that come behind that. And like I said before, keep that in mind. That's going to come into play when we get into CAD. All right, so same thing over here. I think that you get the idea that when we measure these guys, 43.008 with a tilde, that means that there's more numbers beyond that. Okay, so what I want to do now is set up a drawing in layout, and we're going to use the Condoc Flex drawing set, which is flexible by nature. Basically, it's just going to take whatever tags are visible when we run the plan, section, elevation, perspective tools. It's going to snapshot whatever the layer visibility is. The case with this model, we're just using untagged. We're going to set up a plan, we're going to send it to layout, and now we're going to explore, in addition to our drawing precision and our display precision, our dimension precision in layout. All right, so I'm going to clear my guides. I have a keyboard shortcut, Control E. It's under Delete Guides. All right, and then with the Flex drawing set loaded, I can just set up a plan. We'll save that, and we're going to do a CAD floor plan and hit Create Plans. All right, and all that does is sets up a nice clean overhead plan design like that. All right, and then I can export this drawing over into Layout. We're going to send that CAD floor plan 01 over, and I guess I will, this is a big model, so I'll say 1/8 of an inch, send to Layout, and we will save this to our desktop temp folder, and this will be called our structural grid, like that. Cool, so what that does now, that Condoc drawing export, sends it over to Layout, where I can start a new document using one of our templates, and I like to go with like a 24 by 36, and then all of the drawings, they always land in your scrapbooks dialog. There's this Condoc drawings scrapbook. That's where your drawings will always land. And then you can just drag it over here like this and then stretch your viewport around. When I zoom in, we're gonna start setting up some dimensions. So for this task, I'm gonna switch over to our Condoc annotation scrapbook, and we're also gonna bring up our dimension style. If I want to dimension this, let's activate our dimension tool. And keep in mind that your dimension tool has properties in the shape style dialog, in the text style dialog, and also in your dimension style dialog. Well, you can get all those, soak up all those properties by using this Condoc annotation scrapbook. So I'm just going to click on like 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to dimension, and nobody beat me up on how I'm dimensioning. I'm just kind of trying to make some dimensions that makes for demonstration. Maybe this isn't exactly how you would dimension this grid out. I'm also going to right click and turn off my grid snap. Definitely don't want that on. So I've set up a linear dimension like that. And then I'm just going to go in, and I suppose I'll just select this guy. And you can see that the dimension precision is set to a 1/64 of an inch. So you can also change this over to decimal, and then you can dial this up further if you like. All right, so you have that ability inside of Layout to dimension to a precision that is comparable to the display precision of SketchUp, at least when it comes to linear dimensions. So for this one, I don't know, I guess for right now, I'm gonna leave this on architectural. And then I'm gonna go back and add another dimension. And I'm being very careful, you know, zooming way in. Look at this, I'm at 3000% in. And I'm gonna snap to that endpoint in the model. And then I'm gonna zoom over here and snap to this point. And then come up here and then snap to that point. And I'll fix those in just a minute, but right now I wanna kind of use that like double click scenario where I can just go through here and double click like that. And then on our final one there, double click. All right, so like, you know, this dimension here, maybe I'll just select it and hit enter, and then I can scoot this over here. And that's pretty good for these dimensions as far as, you know, demonstrating, you know, what that's gonna look like. I think the big thing I wanna get at in here is gonna be our radial or angular dimensions. To do that, I think I'm gonna draw some lines in layout. And again, over here in our annotations palette, I can pick a line weight. You know, maybe I'll just like draw a line and just kind of see what it looks like and pick a different line weight. So maybe something like that'll look good. And then our shape style is going to be long dash, short dash like that. That looks pretty good too. And you know, all you have to do is like draw this line in, and then you can kind of continue it on like this. And I'm just gonna like extend past. So if I trace this line here, and then, you know, continue on beyond it like that, you know, you can't actually, well, let me just make sure. If I like, you know, hover on this, it doesn't give me that inference. But if I kind of turn that into layout geometry, you can see that now I get that like magenta inference. So then I can kind of project these out like that. All right, so I think for this demonstration, you know, 3 different angles is gonna be sufficient. And then if I zoom in over here, I should be able to split these. Yeah, they might not all intersect. So let's just draw a quick line, and you know, we'll get rid of it in just a moment. And I'm gonna trim up where these guys intersect like that and like that. All right, and now I can delete these out of there. And I suppose I'll just kind of delete these out of there. So now I've just got a few like, you know, column lines projecting back to a known column line here. And what I want to do now is set up an angular dimension. All right, so we'll go to our angular dimension, and notice that over in my dimension style inspector, I want to set my precision. Let's see, maybe I need to draw something first. So we're gonna set up our 2 like legs of this dimension. So you just kind of trace those 2, and then we'll set one there. And I'm gonna select it, and then let's set our display precision. Now, I made a mention of this earlier. The dimension precision of angles in layout doesn't match the display precision of angles in SketchUp. So we've got our 2 decimal places there. So now I can activate my angular dimension, and I'll tap S, and I can soak up the properties of that dimension, and then I can very quickly and easily set up another dimension with the same properties or the same style like that. This one, I guess I'll dial this one just in, you know, closer so it's not on the line. Hit enter, and you can kind of drag this one around so they're equally spaced. Okay, so we're in good shape. We've got our angular dimensions, our linear dimensions. Let's just finish off this drawing real quick, and I'll show you a few more tips and tricks in layout before we get over into SketchUp to export our CAD backgrounds and start testing those out in a CAD program. All right, so again, we'll just activate our dimension tool, and I'm gonna tap S, and I can soak up the properties of that dimension. And then I'll just kind of go along and just finish this thing off. So, you know, drag it over here, and then just zooming in and making sure I'm getting a clean double click on each one of these center points. You know, like when I do that dashed lines deal, you know, you can kind of create some extra edges. So you do want to zoom in and be careful with these guys. But, you know, no big deal like that. We're in good shape. All right. And then whenever you've got a dimension that you want to edit, it's best to select it and hit enter. And then when you hit enter, you can scoot this around and kind of snap it to some different text placements that are preset. Also, when you hit enter, you're in this like dimension edit mode. So you can kind of scoot these, give it a little more breathing room off of the endpoint. You can also get there by double clicking, but I find that it's easier just to select it and hit enter. And then if I select this guy and then scoot this back, you can start to kind of line them up. So there's a few tips like that. And then if I go over into my Condoc annotations scrapbook, maybe I want to name my column lines, like we'll go like this. We'll say A and B. And check that out. That's that new auto text baked into our Condoc annotation scrapbook. And then furthermore, let's go with we'll do kind of a sub column line 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, like that. So that's kind of slick. And then I'll zoom out a bit. We also want to take a look at dimensions, our other column, all right? So we want to take a look at what happened here, but check this out. You could re-export this drawing, but here's what I'm going to do is just select this whole viewport and make a copy of it like that, all right? And then I'm going to enter that viewport and select this SketchUp model reference, and we're going to change the scale manually here in layout. You don't always have to use that Condoc drawing export. We're going to set this to be much larger scale of 1.5 inches equals a foot. And I'll just stretch this out like that, kind of zoom way out, stretch this around. And I'm just looking for that column. I know it exists. So we're gonna scoot it down like this. There it goes. All right, so there's my column. So this is how you can create details. These are like that. And I would say that maybe I don't need as much of those column or those grid lines to be represented like that. And then I would also say that I want the line weights to be a bit heavier. And whenever you're setting your line weights, it's a good idea to look at this at 100% and then select it. And you can see that my line scale for the viewport is at 0.29. I don't know, let's try a 1. 1's a little heavy, so maybe a 0.8, like that. So that looks pretty good. If I want to dimension this guy, I can activate my dimension tool and we can get back into our Condoc annotations palette. And we do have 1.5 inches equals a foot, so I can select that. And then let's just click like that. And see how it's to the outside. Well, that's the reason for these top and bottom orientations. And you can change those on the fly, well, I guess it's doing a leader anyway, but you can change those on the fly by selecting it. So I'll click there, double click, and double click. Yeah, see this one's on the inside. I don't like that, so we're gonna select all of these guys. And you can even tap S and sample from your scrapbook. I sampled the wrong one, so we'll do that. These scrapbook palettes are super powerful. They'll really keep you out of the other inspectors and the other dialogues. All right, and then I'll just hit enter and scoot this guy to a better position, hit enter and scoot it in there. All right, and then what I might do is just take a quick look at the display precision of these dimensions, all right, or the precision of these dimensions. So we're set to a 64th. Well, if I go to decimal and dial this way up, look at that. So your linear dimensions, you're given those 6 decimal places for linear dimensions, and then for the angular dimensions, you're only given 2, despite the fact that we're given 3 inside of SketchUp. All right, then one last little final touch on these drawings. We'll throw drawing title 1 and 2, like that. Looks good to me. Drawing precision is well beyond the display precision in SketchUp. It's going to be interesting is what happens when we export a CAD background that we would send over to a structural engineer and take a look at the precision of that DWG when it lands in a CAD program that has a higher Display Precision. So to cap this thing all off and put all these rumors to rest, let's open up, I'm gonna use LibreCAD. I'm kind of done with paying for CAD. All I do is like open files and look at them and kind of check them and then close it. LibreCAD is a free CAD program. It's good enough just to kind of check your drawings and take a few measurements. And so we'll click around in there. I'll throw a link in the description for that as well. Let's get in there and get to it. I'm going to export a 2D graphic. So export 2D graphic. And the settings on here, we're gonna wanna kick out a DWG file. And our options, we wanna set this, I always use AutoCAD 2000. You definitely wanna go with a full scale export and no profile lines, no section lines, definitely no extensions, and that looks good. All right, so we're gonna send this to my desktop temp folder. It is called Structural Grid, and we'll click Export. All right, next, we're gonna open up LibreCAD. It's as powerful as really, any 2D drafting program. Definitely is not architectural desktop, but it definitely doesn't cost anything, so that's pretty cool. So that's why I use it, just to open my files, Control O, I'm sure you'd hit that folder, and just open up this structural grid. And then if I double click my mouse button, I can zoom extents and just get a feel for what's going on with this DWG. All right, now let's look at our options under current drawing preferences and take a look at our units. So you can see that we can set our precision for length. Actually, what does architectural look like? Architectural goes to 128th, all right? Let's just stick with decimal for now. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, let's go all the way up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, and then our angles are gonna be in decimal degrees. These go way higher as well. So I'll click OK, and then we're gonna wanna measure, we could measure a distance first. All right, so we're gonna be measuring like point to point. All right, so let's zoom way in and let's measure a point to point from here to here and check it out. 0.98765432. So that went, we were only missing one decimal place, but if I go back into SketchUp and zoom in and measure this, we're getting 0.987654. So what I'm demonstrating here is that in SketchUp, we're getting our 6 decimal places of precision. It doesn't mean that those decimal places don't exist though, and when you export into CAD, we're seeing 0.98765432. So we're getting our 8 decimal places versus our 6. And then just to kind of recap on that here in layout, we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's as good as we can do. All right, so let's check our angular dimensions. All right, so we'll go to SketchUp first. And again, I'll just like kind of project these guidelines over here, like this. And we can use our protractor tool and measure that intersection from here to here is going to be 13.910. Now, if I go into LibreCAD and zoom out and kind of measure this angle, so we can go to our measurements and we're going to go an angle between 2 lines. And so we'll select this line and say this line and check it out down here, 13.9095029. So you get your angle to the max 8 decimal places versus in SketchUp where we're limited to 3. But it doesn't mean that SketchUp is not precise. It's just the display precision is only showing you those 3 decimal places. And then if we go into layout, you can see that we're really limited on our actual dimension. And I guess if you really needed those, you could hop over into CAD, copy these angles and paste them, but who would ever even think to do that? So what do you think now? Are you on board with the idea that SketchUp can match the precision of any CAD program out there? Did this tutorial change your perspective? I'm eager to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below. The next time you hear someone doubting SketchUp's precision, you know exactly what video to send them. This one. Did you miss our latest upload? Well, you can check it out right here. Or you might be curious how my Condoc tools have become fully compatible with the Mediq tools. I explain it all in this video. Now, before you click away, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to me. I'll be back with more SketchUp tips, tricks, and insights, so stay tuned for the next video. I'll see you then.